Hey guys, how y'all doing? I know there's a bunch of questions out there from the community today, so I want to really dive into those. I do have some things that I want to talk about here today, and I'm probably going to cover a lot of what I've seen going on in the chat and some of the community's discussion. But for today, if you guys have questions specifically, just put them in the chat. I can see them here. I think there's a slight delay, and I will do my best to get to all of the ones that I can during the chat here today. So let me just give a quick intro into what we're going to be talking about here for today. There was some really big news that was put out there specifically about U-Trade and how we are not going to continue operation of U-Trade into the future. That is currently going through a wind down phase today. And we did put out there some information regarding kind of why and more or less the emphasis on the UP token in relation to that. Now, this whole thing is coming in the context of building out a more sustainable blockchain solution for the greater crypto world, let's say. So with that being said, I'm going to kind of dive right in. I suppose we can go ahead and kind of start with some of the announcements. The biggest announcement being that U-Trade is no longer going to be operated after December 1st. And the main driver of this, to be perfectly honest, is making sure we're concentrating our efforts where we gain the most wins, where we win the most. And frankly, at the end of the day, the Unifi token is meant to be a governance token. It is designed to be a governance token. It is designed to be a community token so that people can come in, manage parameters, manage smart contracts, manage decisions, manage finances in regards to Unifi as an ecosystem itself. So today, as U-Trade does operate, it requires a lot of effort. It requires a level of complexity that would be extremely difficult for a DAO to manage on their own, not unachievable, but it is extremely difficult to just manage day one. So for us, what that means is it does to some extent become a bit of a blocker in this transitional time. And it's not something that can't be reopened. These are smart contracts. They're not deleted off of the blockchain. All we're talking about is the fact that we see that from the node perspective, from the data perspective, this is going to be something that is going to be very difficult for a DAO to manage. And you add to the fact that it doesn't, from our perspective, add as much value to the overall ecosystem as some other parts, that it makes sense to kind of continue in this route. When we take a look at places like Ethereum, Binance Smart Chain, Harmony, these different blockchains, there are very, very large and successful DeFi AMMs out there, Pancake or Uniswap, Viper, whatever, what have you. There are some very, very successful ones that are out there. And from our perspective, we've designed a ecosystem around UP that is designed to leverage those essentially. So if we take a look at the UP token itself and kind of where the development has gone this year relative to the AMM, I can say with a lot of confidence that the UP token is by far the most complex, the most analyzed, the most efforted towards constructing something sustainable DeFi object that we have. Far more complex and far more capable than U-Trade itself. U-Trade is just a sandbox for DeFi. It does currently plug into the UP ecosystem very easily, but we have not seen a huge amount of value going into UP from U-Trade. So when we take a look at the ecosystem itself, UP v2 is designed to incorporate all kinds of new and interesting strategies. Probably the most interesting one that I think of is the way that we're able to maintain, or I should say UP is able to maintain its own collateralization, which means that it can stay one-to-one backed regardless of what happens. And that means that we can actually take it and participate inside of not just U-Trade AMM, but inside of other AMMs as well with the confidence that it can't fall from its backing. It's affixed in such a way within the contract we have the confidence that that can work. And that's really what's been happening today, is kind of building to that. And that gives us a ton of huge boosts here. So currently, I think we have a couple $1 million in up on Binance Smart Chain that is currently inside of an LP. That would be a pretty interesting exposure to see if that was on Pancake, as an example. It's a perfect example. And what that does is that gives us a ton of things. It gives us, number one, exposure, but number two, the ability for things like Darby, some other rebalancing, up value increases, new minted up liquidity can all be deposited into a much more public space. And that's a net win for the up token. At the same time, the up VV2 does allow multiple strategies. So if we consider Pancake as an example as a potential strategy, there are additional ones. It can be staked. It can be put into some other lending system for additional APR. And these are things that we've been experimenting with. Now, we've started out relatively small, I think 5%, smaller amounts, some small amounts inside of the LP. I think originally Binance was only 25% inside of the LP. Now we're up to 75. And various things like that we've learned along the way is like how to kind of take this concept that we have tested a huge amount internally on multiple blockchains and start to expand that. And I'm confident now today that we're at a point where we have something that is extremely composable across all of these different blockchains. We can take up now and we can integrate strategies with brand new AMMs, the most popular ones on the blockchains that now we are, to get new exposure and new awareness of the up token. And we're confident that it works because we've seen it on Harmony and we've now seen it on Binance Smart Chain that as we incorporate these new strategies, they have significant impacts on the rate at which the up redeem value does go up. And as a company, we have made a big decision internally for how to work. And that is to make more data-driven decisions. And I think that everyone here can appreciate that we are not coming in here with some gut reaction. It's like, oh, I feel like this is the best route. We're taking our time. We're putting in effort. We are challenging ourselves internally a lot on making that effort to take data that we can find and put things at the top security that we've maintained since we began into these new and diverse strategies for the up token. And that's really what this U-Trade move is all about. It's about taking the data that we have and saying, hey, we're seeing this amount of success. You know, I think Harmony has seen like a multi-% growth in just like the last month as a measure of context. But we're taking this data now and we're saying, hey, why make it worse? Why not take the data that we have, take the facts that we know, and use that to expand this into a wider degree of success? And that's really what's happening with U-Trade. You pair that with some of these DAO functionalities, and you can kind of see why we're going in this direction. And from my perspective, it gives up the best possible opportunity to be something interesting that can be incorporated into more DeFi systems, that can touch with a lot of existing DAOs that are out there and AMMs and DeFi concepts today. And I think it really makes it the most interesting possible, because now to be a part of Up, you don't have to say, I don't believe in Pancake or I don't believe in Uniswap. You can say, hey, I believe in Pancake and I like to use that system for whatever reason, but I think this is a cool thing to use, and I think it's a very cool and sustainable way to grow the tokens that I have on that on Binance Smart Chain. It definitely lowers the barrier of entry for everyone. So, from my perspective, that's a huge step up. Talking a little bit more now about Unifi DAO governance and things like that. it has long been the intention of Unifi to basically step in as kind of a governance operator of these smart contracts. One of them, of course, being the token itself on all these different blockchains. And that's why we're going to continue that rollout. Is although U-Trade on a lot of these blockchains is no longer going to be supported, we will continue to roll out up V2 onto new and additional blockchains this year, and going into next year. It's going to be about providing the resources to the DAO to be able to roll that out as it sees forward into the future. Same with the bridge and things like this that I think are extremely important to allowing the DAO the ability to not just sustain itself and have something interesting that it can offer publicly, but the tools that it needs to grow and be more successful in the future. So that's kind of where we're at now. Talking about Unifi, we've been really focused on this kind of stable blockchain, and I got to be perfectly honest here. At this point, we're at a critical point, I would say, with that, and we have gone into, let's call it like a semi-stealth mode about this. The reason being, we have made a lot of advances specifically around the data. Data as of this year, we put a huge emphasis on gathering as much information as we can to make better decisions. But not just that information we're beginning to learn is providing us a perspective on the industry and some of the things that are out there today that few others have. And that makes it very challenging for us to talk too much publicly about these things before they're ready to actually go live to the public. And so a lot of that, unfortunately, has to kind of be curtailed going forward. How this impacts Unifi itself, the DAO itself, well, I think that we can finally start looking forward into how the DAO is going to operate and manage these smart contracts. From my perspective, it has long been the DAO that can be used for managing these smart contracts and things like that. But its number one mission in the future, going into 2023 and beyond, is going to be to decentralize itself. And that's going to be kind of the number one thing that Unifi itself can bring to the table. So if we're looking at how it's going to interact with a stable coin-based blockchain or a stable chain or something like that we're going to build in the future, the best directive that I can give is it needs to decentralize itself. That means that it needs to be able to operate independently. That means that it needs the ability and capabilities to implement new changes. And that does also mean that it needs to effort towards working with other companies, DAOs, apps, and things like that. So looking at 2023, the intent is to pass over a lot of smart contracts directly to the DAO to make sure that the DAO has the ability to execute or implement smart contract interactions itself, totally on its own, based off of votes and parameters that are all on chain. And frankly, the DAO needs enough capital to be able to do stuff. And today, I think that we see that there's a lot of talk about the circulating supply of Unifi and all these things. There is a lot of undistributed tokens that the DAO can kind of step in and kind of take itself and use to effort towards decentralization. And I think it's extremely important that we give it the leg up for it to make that effort itself so that it can step in and say, hey, we want to partner with XYZ company, with NFTs, with a different DAO, with go onto a different blockchain, do whatever it needs to do, and things can start to actually operate more organically as a true DAO. So that's kind of my thinking going into next year. And that's why you're seeing a lot of efforts around the up token, the U-Trade, and these changes to make sure that when it's time for us to push that, we're ready to do so. So with that being said, I think I've covered a lot of the details here. I think there's a question here. Will Unifi, the token governed stablechain, do you need Unifi token to vote? So I think these are both kind of separate questions here. When I take a look at stablechain, like I said, this is going to be a little bit of a challenge for me to talk about much. I do want to say that for the most part, we're going to be very much validator focused. And so that would probably be the best way for things to interact with a stablecoin blockchain. In regards to, do you need Unifi token to vote? Yeah, I think that that's probably the best one. Is Unifi token today is currently used for a lot of these, let's call them more proposal snapshot-like referendums, which is great. I think that's how most DAOs operate today. Is they actually just like do referendums, and somebody with a private key can kind of step in and say, "Oh, I'll do what the referendum says." We're going to have that next year for some amount of time. That's going to be a part of this transition into a true Unifi token voting for real changes in smart contract to happen. That will exist for some time, but it is our expectation that next year we transition entirely into the Unifi token not only voting but being capable of implementing changes as well. So if there's like a different strategy we want to implement, or change of staking rates, or send tokens to Bored Ape Yacht Club for some token exchange, whatever it decides to do, it can basically do, and it will have the capability and it'll have both the capability and the structure in place to kind of do that. So that kind of takes me through a lot of the updates here, guys. I know it's kind of tough because I think we're at a very challenging point as a company. To keep things in a little bit of context here, for those of you that are new, we've been doing this for a long time, and for those of you that are not new, we've been doing this for a long time. And it's long been our effort and our belief that we can kind of operate things more as a decentralized community from a governance perspective, and that's what Unifi was largely there and designed to do. That is still the mission of, and will continue to be its mission into the future. But I think that at the same time, we all recognize that it's really important that we start making decisions based off of what information is available, and a lot of that is going to be data based. So that's kind of why you're seeing most of these changes. That's why you're seeing some of these things that I would call improvements. And for the most part, I think that Unifi today is in a position where it is more capable of doing interesting and new ideas than it's ever been able to. The ability to control the smart contracts that it does own, and the ability to interact with outside companies. So with that being said, I don't see any other questions. Okay, I see one here. Is there another way to collect up liquidity rewards without the U-Trade platform? So, okay, this is a good, basically, I think that the concept here is up liquidity rewards. I think that what they mean is probably, is there a way to collect up liquidity rewards? I'm kind of assuming they mean, is there a way to earn off of your up? And the up redeem, the value does increase over time. I think there's like 5 or 6 main drivers of that. The bulk of those being with V1 entirely just on U-Trade interactions. Today, now the up redeem value can go up. For example, if up is deployed in a Pancake or Uniswap, trades there will generate redeem value. So I don't think that's like I think it's really hard to see that as a detractor, where previously just trades on U-Trade of the up native token could generate additional redeem value. After this change, after the wind down of U-Trade itself and the ability for up token to be implemented into other DeFi systems via strategies, trades on Uniswap, Pancake Swap of the up token will increase the redeem value. So I'm very much challenged to see that as a negative. In terms of, but maybe you mean, how do you actually earn more up? It's mintable. You can walk in, you can just mint it. That's continue to exist. That's there. It's available. If you do mint it, the backing is going to be used in various strategies. Darby is going to continue to operate to arbitrage that. It's going to continue to be deployed into staking, possibly lending, and other AMMs to earn liquidity, to earn rewards. It's quite complex how it does that. I don't want to spend too much time there. There's lots of documentation that you can read about on that, but it's a pretty novel and very interesting approach to how to generate sustainable DeFi rewards. So Steve here is putting out that more information about Unifi and the DAO should be released before or right after the new year. Yeah, that's our intent. We really want to get this really clear and solidified here by the end of 2022, so everybody knows where it's going, what's happened so far, and why we've made these decisions that kind of line us up for the best possible success. I'm trying to remember if there were any other questions or comments from the chat. If you guys don't have anything else, though, I'm going to wrap it up here. I hope that's helpful. Steve, I know you're listening. Is there anything else you want me to talk about or ask about, or Keith or anybody else that's tuned in? And if not, I can kind of cut out there, guys. All right. So I'm going to wrap it up there then. Thank you all so much. Again, if you have questions or comments, feel free to post them. We're going to keep you as up to date on what's going on as possible. Again, this is, from my perspective, all an opportunity for us to see up and and its ecosystem be more adopted by other and new DeFi concepts, and that under the governance of Unifi really sets us up for the best possible future. So thank you all so much and have a great rest of your week. Bye.